And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Social. This one kind of a weird and special occasion in that it's not just Andrew and I on the screen. We are joined by Jackie and Amanda. They've now recorded 3 episodes, I believe, of Dualistic Unity Real, as well as a number of episodes for season 6, which is coming up in the very near future. So we're excited to see where this conversation goes. I honestly don't know where the fuck this conversation goes. I know I started off and they were already talking shit about me when I got here, assuming that I couldn't hear them, of course, because I am so focused on what I was doing, being as professional as I am. You motherfuckers, I could hear you, absolutely. But I guess that's the whole point, is that you can focus on what you need to focus on. You don't have to listen to all the voices speaking about you in the background, because half the time they're just talking shit for their own reasons, you know. Anyway, now I'm done fucking with all of you. It's nice to start the episode. Welcome.
Yeah, great to have. I don't even know if saying have you guys join. It's like we're all kind of joining together at once at the same time. There's nothing that you're really joining that isn't, because we kind of joined. You guys were on here first anyway before this live. But yeah, we're getting into some shit talking, not about anyone in particular, but literally talking about shit and how often we'll go back to the same familiar shit, despite knowing how it tastes and despite knowing how it is. And I was thinking of an example. It's funny now that I'm saying shit. Yeah, people probably know not actual shit. Although it did seem like Jackie may have tasted a little bit at one point in her life. And she has shit muncher on there, so I think it was like that double entendre or reverse psychology. But anyway, enough of that. How I've gotten, and I even am hesitant to say better, but like sometimes when I would eat food, I would eat a bunch, and like I've always had a pretty big appetite, but I would eat beyond the point of fullness, and I guess it is always that gap of, you feel full 30 minutes after or whatever, but I would go back to it like over and over and over, and it was like the immediacy of the gratification of the food, like the number of times I would go back to eating a bunch. And it's not like I never got to the extreme of like an eating disorder or anything necessarily, but I would continue to like eat enough to have a stomach ache, and then it would pass on, and then I would do it not immediately the next day, but like again at some point, maybe a week later or something. And so it's interesting how, we'll pass off something we know, like, oh, I know I'm going to get a stomach ache from this, and I'll still do the thing because it's almost like I don't want to look at that, or I'm so focused on the feeling good right now. And it's like along the lines of delayed gratification in a sense, but it's kind of like it wasn't a forced thing, like, oh, I should stop eating because of delayed gratification. It's just like having sensitivity to the situation, being like, okay, how do I actually feel right now, as opposed to what do I want to consume right now. And so instead of delayed gratification, it's like more so sensitivity, I think, that's shifted a little bit more for me, because previously in my life it was all the focus on like control, discipline, delayed gratification, things like that, as opposed to the sensitivity. So anyway, as we were talking about eating the same shit, going back to the same shit pile over and over, that example started to come to mind.
Hey. So apparently I was caught talking shit on Ray. Sorry, Ray. Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's back. Yeah, excited to be here. We were really getting into it in our live about like thought and control. And that is the familiar shit. Like thought in itself is escapism. And it is like we're just lost in our imagination. Amanda put it really beautifully by just saying, like, you don't have to say that you're like hoping for something or you're worried about something. All of that is just imagination. And at the end of the day, whether it's like a daydream or like a nightmare, it's equally taking away from your attention in the present moment. And that could be the same, like we distract ourselves in so many ways. Like I'd say thought is inherently escapism. It's trying to gain some sorts of, oh my God, some sense of control over just what's happening. But on one hand, it can be used as a tool, but in the moment itself, thought isn't required. Like, you just respond how you're responding. And I think we just create our own suffering over and over just by falling into things that are habitual. And like, we know that old story. And for some reason, we can just continuously bash our head up against that wall because it's the same wall that we've always bashed our head up against. And like, we're kind of like, the pain is familiar. The pain gives us a sense of who we are. And the pain of like choosing a different pathway. It's not even pain. It's just discomfort, like a growing pain of choosing some less familiar shit to try. Anywho, yeah, like, we create all of the suffering for ourselves, and at the same time, it's all just part of this unfolding, this dance that's happening that we're a part of, that we can't even say with certainty we're in control of. Like, we're not, well, obviously we're not in control, but like, we can't even say that we're in control of the things that we can control, like our attention. So yeah, we've just been going into all that. But we're here in the shit regardless. And once you stop eating the shit, there's less that comes out, I guess. I'm just trying to like be an idiot and play this shit metaphor through the whole episode, like weave it through. It's really dumb, but anyway, hi Amanda.
I love it. It really is. It when you were talking, Jackie, I was thinking of it almost feels like paying attention is like being told to eat your vegetables as a kid, and you're like, I don't wanna, I don't wanna eat my vegetables. Something that is good for you on so many levels, and vegetables are delicious, and it's really funny that it's that's what I compare it to in my imagination. And you're absolutely right. There's no such thing as control. So there's no way that you could control your attention. What I see myself doing is I am relocating my attention. I'm not controlling it. I'm just moving it. I'm just noticing where it's at and moving it. That's all I'm ever really doing, is just moving my attention when I notice that it's somewhere that I'm attaching to, or when I notice that my attention is on something that I'm holding on to. And then just noticing that, I, at that point, have a beautiful opportunity to move that attention anywhere. That feels so cool. And it's interesting. I definitely feel myself excited more often, or straight up laughing at where my attention is, because there's no hiding that I was prioritizing wherever the attention was.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's there's almost like a shift in the perspective of attention. And it's kind of like we were talking about the other day with avoidance versus options. Like, you have the option to put your attention on anything. There's no right or wrong thing to put it on. You can put it on thoughts if you want. That doesn't really do anything. And sometimes you just have to do it enough to realize, like, oh, that doesn't do anything. That definitely doesn't do anything. Yeah, that definitely doesn't do anything, and actually is causing a lot of harm for me, because I keep fucking focusing on it and basically just closing my eyes to what the fuck's actually happening. And then I can come up with the idea that I'm avoiding something by not looking at thoughts. But then it's like, now you're just avoiding the reality that's happening. And there's an enticing pull to certain thoughts and certain thoughts about certain thoughts. But that's just, another way to move that attention. And then when you see that there's nothing being avoided, then it's just where your attention goes, and like everything is an option to look at. Every way of seeing something, every interaction that you have, like paying attention or not, it's like there's a fullness of the experience when you're actually paying attention to it. But it's not to say that's necessarily a the right thing to do, and not paying attention is the wrong thing to do. It comes down to you. Like there's a fullness in your experience when you're actually paying attention to it, when you're actually fully there as yourself, just interacting with it without so much concern of what you're being, how you're being looked at, and all of those thoughts that you may consider, because they're all just considerations going through one mind. And then there's certain ones that we can pick out that we think are personal to us and then focus on. It's like, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to miss out on the fullness of the experience that's being had, the depth of the influence that can be had right now, because there's the illusion that, as long as I consider and focus on certain thoughts, that'll have some better, like I'll get some better impact over what's going on right now, or some curated impact that I think is what's best. But there isn't that. So then it just comes down to me right now. Like, where do I want to focus that attention? Like, where do I want it to be? They're all options. It's not that I'm avoiding anything by looking at it or not looking at it, or thinking there's a right or a wrong. It's just, yeah, they're all on the table. You can focus on what's actually happening, or you can focus on your opinion, your thoughts about what's happening. And you can absolutely do that. But there's going to be a shift in the experience the less you're actually paying attention to it. And the more you're paying attention to it, the more you're going to be able to do, the more. It's not to say more influence, like there's more that can be done, but there's a digging into the experience that changes, just the fullness of your own experience. And so it just comes down to you. There's no one to look to be like, oh, how focused should I be on what's actually happening? Like, that comes down to you and what sort of experience that you're interested in having right now.
And that's so much uncertainty. Like, that's deeply unsatisfying. And I think I'm reckoning with that these last couple months. I feel like it's scary as fuck to just not know what the right thing. Because I just always thought there was a right way, or things would happen for a reason necessarily, or that there was a path that I needed to follow that was the correct path that would take away all my worries, take away all my resistance to what I was feeling all the time, which was just resistance to the present. And so coming back, it's like I'm healing my relationship with the present moment, because it still feels uncomfortable. And but that's also where all of the beautiful and rich and full experiences in life come from, is when you're there, and you really get a feel for how good being yourself is, because if it just feels good to be when you're not thinking or doing it wrong, it's just fun, it's play, you're just expressing like you did when you were a child, as much as you went through the whole spectrum of emotions and fear and uncertainty, there wasn't so much thought about how you should be going through it as a child. But I feel like now that's something that I thought I would achieve, I guess, of knowing. And it's just frustrating when you when you realize you can't know, you're never going to know, and nothing is ever going to take away the fear and pain that you create for yourself. And it's your choice if you want to keep investing in that, keep making that a part of your reality. But yeah, it's like the devil we know. it's more comfortable to run away, but also it's uncomfortable when you realize that, like, because you're always going to come back to the present, and when you're real with yourself, you can realize how, like, running away with your thoughts and like distracting yourself and wasting your time, like, actually is taking away from your experience. And so, like, you can't run from yourself forever, so you might as well just like come out. It's like when you would like do something, when you would be like really mean to your family as a kid or something, and you had to like take responsibility. And you had to come out and be like, I'm sorry I did this. And you just have to own up to it, but then everything is better after that, or like that relationship can heal. But yeah, I think I'm just in a period of rockiness with my relationship to reality.
I'm I don't know, twice your age. I am still in a period of rockiness in terms of my relationship with reality. I think the difference is just that I don't perceive myself to be in as much danger from it as I used to. And as things go up and down, things get rough. And at one point, it would have been devastating to me because I wouldn't have thought like I could get through it. There would have been a lot of thoughts like, oh God, I can't do this. Or, I've made the wrong choice. I should have done this differently. Somebody else would do it better. All that stuff. And it was really just life is what it is. That was all my response to it. Now I've just kind of accepted more that life is what it is. Like there's a lot of wisdom in the expression toughen up. And it can sound like it lacks empathy, but it is, as we've talked about many times, the extreme end of empathy to some degree, because there is a point, and any parent knows this, where continuing to support and help your child do everything actually makes them weaker in the long run. Getting out of the way and letting them fall, letting them do it the hard way, letting them, that actually does help them learn more about who they are, learn a degree of self-efficacy, know that they can face other challenges potentially, right? And that is a really hard thing to do as a parent, but it's very important. And you recognize that that is love, that is compassion, is to teach that person how to essentially toughen up a little bit, which again can be taken too far. And I understand that there's probably somebody listening to this right now who's like, oh, I've heard that shit before. And I get it. I really do. So have I. But again, there is a degree of wisdom in it, in the same way there's a degree of wisdom in, don't pick at it. That one's going to serve you well over your entire lifetime, because you're going to realize it's not just about like scabs and itchy spots. It's about the doubts and the fears and the wanting to go back to the past and the wanting to project into the future. That's just you picking at it. That's you trying to get some satisfaction, but actually getting in the way of the healing process. And so some of these expressions do have an ounce of wisdom to them. It's important to take it in, but as with everything, in balance with a degree of salt. I say toughen up, and on the same level, I will say, as Jackie has said, soften your edges. And I know that sounds contradictory, but they are very much the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that realization that, you know, it can be uncomfortable for someone to allow someone to go through that, like from a parent perspective. And you got to be willing to be uncomfortable in yourself as a parent, to let, if the aversion is to that being the case, it comes back to you. And it's like, how selfish of an aversion to seeing that happen do you have? Like, how much do you think it's being reflected upon you? How honest are you being with yourself in regards to that? And how much is it that the unwillingness to realize how much it could be holding someone back to continue to, you know, support or do something to, you know, like ease their experience in a sense. And because that then is creating a fictional reality to a sense, like it makes it actually, you're going to make it harder to relate for the person to relate to the rest of reality if there's a curated environment in which they're experiencing things. And I've had experiences in my own life, certainly, where this discussion's come up, and there has to be, a willingness to be honest about it. And it's like, all right, where is this desire coming from? Like, where is this coming from? And we have to have an honest conversation, but it comes from both sides, and it's like, it's not always comfortable on either side to be willing to admit, or sometimes if it's there, it has to be, pushed back against. It's got to be like, no, listen, we can get into the depth of this, but the reality is that, there's a lack of faith if there's too much of an unwillingness to have that side of like the, toughen up. You got this. You got this on your own. And I've definitely felt that in certain experiences in my own life where I've felt, deep empathy, for someone, but it comes from a lack of faith in a sense. Like, I don't know if you can do this on your own, so I'm here to help, as opposed to, no, you got this. And that's, as you said, like the ultimate sort of empathy and faith in yourself is, you got this. I'm, and even like, and it's not even like I'm here if you need me. It's like, no, you just you got this. You got this. Because like we were talking earlier, as long as you're looking to someone else for the answer, like there's not even someone who you feel like, oh, they've been at it for a while, and just because I said it before, like I definitely looked at Ray in that sense, like, oh, what would Ray do in this situation? How would Ray respond in this situation? And that comes up for me like more often than sometimes I want to admit, honestly. But like, no, that's not like, it can't come from that spot, because then it's a continued lack of a willingness to find out what I would come up with, what answer I would come up with. Because it's like, whoa, maybe Ray's got more tried and true experiences and gone through errors. So let's take what errors he's gone and figure out from his current perspective. But again, like we were saying, it's like me thinking of that as me and his, or what was it, like me in his shoes as me going through it, and that's not reality. Like I just have a conceptual idea of someone else that I'm thinking, whether it's anyone, a parental figure, a government figure, whatever. And it's like an avoidance of me wanting to take in the recognition myself and realize, no, it's I have just as much of an ability to respond to a situation in a sensitive way as anyone else. But if I don't want to see that I can respond with sensitivity, I'm going to try to avoid that by looking to someone else instead of just being like, no, I have that sensitivity too. And being willing to kind of find that out. Cause it's like sensitivity again is sensitivity where you're at right now. Doesn't mean it's sensitivity of the amount of sensitivity you'll have in a year through experiencing your own sensitivity. But as long as you pass off the responsibility, that, depth of sensitivity that you have isn't going to change. It's not going to be dug into unless you stop looking to anyone else. And then your sensitivity can continue to shift. And then you can continue to find out, what you're capable of, what direction you want to take things, take reality in a sense, as opposed to looking to someone else and passing off that sensitivity, just keeping that sensitivity stagnant in a sense, like on the bench, because you keep looking to someone else.
Yeah, we just get used to like operating within a structure, and like I think we're given ways to be as children, or just like I feel like everybody around us is following these rules, and I think we absorb, like, because you mentioned like how our parents have to sort of at a certain point, like they literally support your every move until you slowly start picking up the responsibilities. But as long as your parents are holding on to those responsibilities and not letting you grow into uncertainty, they're robbing you of experience. And it comes from a place of like fear. I mean, the parents are just enacting the way they were taught to be, and like, you know, you can make do with doing things that everybody else is doing, but I think we all know that we're denying ourselves in a certain way. Like, you can't run from yourself forever. And if there's something that you need to do or that you need to change or that isn't serving you anymore, the shit that you continue eating and you know that you're doing it, you're causing pain to yourself by like not pushing yourself out of the nest and forcing yourself to change. Like, you have to have that almost parental relationship with yourself where, but not from the sense of like enacting the shit that they've learned, but in the sense of just being empathetic but responsible and thinking about things on a much broader scale, and not believing all your little fears or all your little judgments as truth, because you don't know. I mean, how the fuck do I think I know what's best? It does not make sense at all. Like, I have like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence, girl? And it's crazy that I take my own thoughts so goddamn seriously. But it's also on me to be like, all right, that thought is there. I'm gonna look the other way and make a different decision. I'm gonna buck up and consciously walk out of my comfort zone. And that's how growth happens. And the times that I do that, it's always a great payoff. It's rather than going for the instant gratification to shame circle, it's going to the initial discomfort to growth and expansion and change. And that can be another cycle that you fall into. And I feel like constantly we're alternating between the two and learning different things, and it's a self-refining process at the end of the day. But yeah, change can be fucking uncomfortable. Like, it just is. There's no getting around that. So yeah, all you can really do is toughen up. Get it together. Get through it.
Yeah, that's life in a nutshell. Keep going. I wanted to interrupt here for just one moment. We are on Dualistic Unity Social, so there's a bunch of people watching. I'm just looking to the side to watch the live stream at the moment that's currently on Instagram. There's some questions. Well, there hasn't actually been a lot of questions, but people who are watching this are welcome to ask questions, and we will do our best to get to them. In about a half hour, we're going to have a roundtable episode. So that's always a lot of fun. We're joined by community members. We have a discussion about, could be pretty much anything. If you'd like to join us, please do. Join us on patreon.com/dualistic unity. It's a tier 2 or a tier 3 perk that you can be on the round table. I wasn't sure what to call it there. Is it a right, privilege? I'm not even sure. We just like having you on the show. So if you are tier 2 or above, you can join the round table. Of course, there is also a 7-day free trial. So definitely check that out. We know that you'll love that. One person was asking, hey, do you respond to your DMs? I'm going to answer for Andrew, because I know that's who they're addressing at the moment. And, or do you read them? Yes, he reads them. Yeah, he responds to some. That doesn't mean he responds to all of them. We get a lot of DMs on the Dualistic Unity account, and I'm sure Andrew gets far more in his inbox. And a lot of them are just like, "Hey, I have an offer for you," or "Hey, I'd really like to trade this for you," or "Hey," and we appreciate that you are doing your thing. You've got your grind, you've got your business and your dream and all of that stuff, but we've got a lot on our plate. I mean, you are welcome to volunteer time if you'd like to. You're welcome to help Dualistic Unity grow if you'd like to, because that's more or less where Andrew's at. But in terms of DMs, we appreciate getting them, but we can't reply to every one of them. And I know that's especially true for Andrew, because he's one of the busiest motherfuckers here. He's more or less chopping videos and making social stuff and doing that whole thing, being the public face of everything that we do behind the scenes. And so he can't respond to his DMs all the time. I'm just going to speak for him because I can. And aside from that, if anybody, there was a question. Hold up. Oh, hey, Andrew. This is perfect. I DM'd you. I was wondering if you read them. It's fine if you don't. Just curious. We just answered that. You're welcome.
Yes, appreciate you covering that. And I think just to expand on that and everything that we're doing with Dualistic Unity too. And it's funny because someone asked what I do for work on a video once. So I'm actually doing a little vlog today, kind of showing calls, going to talk over some of them, retreat prep, things like that, and just going through all the things because we have a lot of shit out there. And I think that going back to the sensitivity conversation, like that's been a fucking back and forth for me, sure, is like that sensitivity to there not being like, obviously, you know, we have a call, we have an episode, we have a live stream, we have a Patreon group, like that is the thing that I'm going to be doing when it's on our schedule. But outside of that, it's like there's a myriad of things. There's like a bunch of options and like far more. Like I think back to when I was in, you know, had my digital advertising job. It's like there was always some stuff to do, but it was kind of like a couple things and you could work on them. And there was, you know, obviously set times and whatnot. And there isn't that in an entrepreneurial job at all. And like the back and forth and just how it's paired with sort of my own, I don't know, willingness to just be myself too. And like how overlapping it's been in a sense of like being more sensitive to it. Cause there's still like every day, there's not a right answer. There's certain priorities that we have for certain situations for sure. But even then, it's like there could be a bunch of options, a bunch of things, and there's not like a necessarily a time frame. It's just reliant upon awareness and sensitivity, but it's not at all reliant upon like correct, right, you know, definitely this, definitely that. But as like the more awareness and attention you give a certain thing, the more sensitive you are to it, like the more, I don't want to say efficient, but like the more honed in to a thing that you are, the more that you can do and the more you can work through. And the less that you're wondering about whether you're doing something right or correct, letting go of that whole idea and just having faith in yourself, the more you do. And the more it becomes this sort of like flow of things. And the sensitivity becomes a flow too. It's not so much, you know, always having to take a step back, being like, all right, now consider everything. Let's take 20 minutes to figure out what to do next. It's just kind of like, no, this makes the most sense. And there's certain experiences I have where I'll feel like I'm more sensitive to things or less sensitive to things, but it's always kind of in flux and whatever. And even when maybe I feel like I'm doing something else, there's still like when you're in the situation, that's all you can do. Like when I was running on Sunday, that the marathon, like I was pretty baked for a lot of it. And whenever I get baked, I have all the fucking shit come up in my head. And there was a few points where it was like, you know, got a little bit overwhelming. And then it's like, yeah, but like the only thing I can do right now is what I'm doing right now. And then when I can do something else, I can do something else. And then when I'm doing that, that's the only thing I can be doing. And so it's interesting just the balance of experiencing that sensitivity without necessarily a correct way, but there's, and it's not to say there's a correct way, but there is a sensitivity that's continued to be found based on, you know, your willingness to, yeah, take responsibility for your situation. And then that experience of freedom and the sensitivity and the awareness kind of all start to go hand in hand in a sense, because, you know, you don't have one without the other at all. And it's like the continued, you know, recognizing, oh, you're interacting with yourself, you're looking into your own mind. Like, is that actually being practiced? Like, is that actually being expressed in a sense, that recognition? Or is it just some superficial fucking thing that you like to talk about because you feel like you're good at talking about that? You know, because there's a difference.
We have a question in the comment section that's kind of applicable to this, and I'm going to pass it to Amanda. The question is, how do you find the balance between being too hard on yourself versus too soft on yourself?
All right, I love it. I am. How do you balance it? My mind immediately wants to say it's not black and white. It's not. I'm so hard on myself and I'm so soft on myself. Is that I am I am both. And I am moving my attention towards being harsh on myself when my imagination is coming up with a story that says that I'm not doing enough. And when I'm being so soft on myself, my imagination is telling me a story that I need a break. This is too hard. I can't handle this. So I need to be softer with myself. And this question reminds me of the thoughts that I was thinking about when we were talking earlier about imagination. And for me, I was thinking imagination is where everything comes from. And I mean, our laws we imagined, our cultures we imagined, our languages we imagined, everything, every single thing in this reality that we experience, both individually and as a group, everything came out of imagination. Like, not a single thing did not come out of imagination. Not an invention, not a service, not a sports, not nothing. Everything came out of imagination. So why do we act like it can't be changed again? Like we couldn't imagine something different? Like it needs to be some serious thing. And we've got to do something serious, because imagination, that's what children do. Imagination, that's, we can't imagine. Imagination isn't the solution to our global problems. And it's like, well, we certainly imagined the products that are adding to global warming. We certainly, we live in imagination land. Like this is pure imagination. So when I think about like being super hard on myself or being gentle and toughening up or softening my edges, it's just a spectrum. And sometimes I imagine I'm being too soft on myself when I'm judging the ways that I'm interacting with myself, the ways that I am gentle with myself. And I love the point that you made, Jackie, earlier about like being your own parent, because to some degree, you always are. And you're either the parent that is spoiling your kid, not noticing the trends and not noticing the patterns that they're falling into, or you're the parent that's a drill instructor that is more drill sergeant, more principal, more warden than an actual parent. But you're always being a parent, and you're always just imagining what you can and can't do. And so, Andrew, when you were talking earlier about, you think about like what Ray would do, and it's like, why is it easier for you to imagine someone else doing it better? That's all you're doing, in my opinion, is you're just imagining that Ray does it easier, that Ray does it better. Why are you imagining that? Ray is like, that's right, but it's like, and I love that playfulness, but that's truly all that you're doing, is that you're imagining that you can't do that you wouldn't do it in that way. But that's what I mean. Like everything that we experience, it's all coming from imagination. So I love that, because I think the way that we kind of say that imagination is okay is when imagination is in a dream context. I can dream of something grand. I can dream, and that's okay to say as an adult. But if I were to walk into my corporate office today and to tell everybody, I would love to tell you about what I've been imagining lately, they would look at me like I'm crazy. But if I were to say, hey, can I tell you about a dream I had last night? Nobody would question me. Right? But it's basically saying the same thing. I'm telling you something that was in my imagination that only I got to experience. And yet in one context, it's well received, and in another, it's not. And we fail to see how everything has stemmed from imagination. There is not a single thing that we experience that did not come from did not come from our imagination. And so when you asked the question earlier, Andrew, about, could we be more efficient, and it's like, if we're paying attention, and the answer my mind came up with was attention is sensitivity. Because when I'm paying attention, I feel way more sensitive. So for me, it feels like attention is sensitivity. Like for me, my mind cannot separate them as two separate things right now, because when you pay attention, you're sensitive to that moment. So for me, it feels like attention is sensitivity. I don't know. It just, my mind was going on a rant, and this is where we're at.
No, I would say that's exactly correct. I mean, that's exactly what we learned in Kung Fu. And it goes back to a point you were making earlier. In fact, it goes back to the name that you've chosen for today, attention mover. When we're practicing Kung Fu, what we're really doing is we move our body around, is shifting our focus from one part of our body to another. And as our attention drifts around our body moves accordingly. Right. But we are moving our attention, and that is what's moving our body, moving our stance, moving where we're putting our weight, moving where we're putting our focus, all of that. We have a few minutes left. I wanted to mention that we are going to be continuing in 18 minutes with a roundtable episode. You can join us, twitch.tv/dualistic unity. I know Andrew will likely be live streaming from his Instagram account. The problem with that, of course, is that he's going to be chatting with us, so he's not necessarily going to be responding to you. If you would like to be a part of this conversation, you can join us on YouTube Live, or you can join us on Twitch. We do this every 2 weeks. We are going away next week to the Netherlands for our 9th retreat. We're going there for our 9-day retreat, is what I'm saying. So we won't be here next week for a call-in show. So if you can join us today, 6 p.m. Eastern time, definitely do so. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to pass this over. Actually, hold up. We had a question. Oh, yeah, it's a good one. And since it's only 3 minutes left or so, I'm going to pass it over to Jackie. Jackie, what are your thoughts on veganism?
Oh, I think we were talking about this earlier a little bit because I used to be vegan from my senior year in high school until I was vegan. Well, I'll just say I was vegan for 3 years, and then I became vegetarian after that, and now I eat meat again. So it's been a journey. I just want to get that out of the way so people know I've been through this, and I'm just speaking from my own experience. But I remember when I went vegan, it came from a spot of empathy. It came from me, I've always really been empathetic towards animals and stuff. So, seeing animals hurt in any way would always make me really emotional. And so my sister was vegan before me. She went vegan, and then I got curious about it. I was like, oh, what's that all about? I watched this documentary called Earthlings, and it showed the inside of the slaughterhouses, how they were keeping the chickens, how they were slaughtering everything. It talked about the environmental impact of factory farming and all of that. And I was like, all right, I'm done. After that, I was vegan for 3 whole years. And, I think there's nothing wrong with eating a vegan diet if you really feel that strongly about it, and if you want to make a difference, or you don't want to support the consumption of animal products, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But I think the issue comes when you start to identify as a vegan, or start to get on your high horse about it and start to vilify everyone else, because I did this for a while. I would get frustrated and angry with my family for eating meat in front of me and stuff. And I was like, I'm the one that decided this. And then now I was up on a stool. So then I had to defend it at all costs. So it's fine if you want to eat a vegan diet, just be considerate of all your nutrition and things. For me, I think my veganism would also fall into some sort of restrictive eating. I was very into fitness at the time, and counting my calories and macronutrients and all that. And I think controlling my food to the extent that I did sort of led into that, because it's oh, how much more of this can I control to make my life better? So for me, it fed into that mentality of control, and it was making me obsess or think about things that really weren't actually important. I was putting all my time and energy into that, rather than, I don't know, it was investing in systems of control rather than being sensitive and receptive to what my body actually wanted to eat. And Like I was craving meat and eggs and things, and that's why I started eating them again. But also my perspective towards eating animals in general has changed because I've kind of accepted that, you know, all of life is an exchange of energy, and we're part of that as well. Like we have such an aversion to death and killing, and especially things that like are remind us of our own humanity, or like we feel closer to a cow than we do to like a plant, you know? So we empathize more with them, but like I just see sort of everything that you're eating as equally, like you're still consuming you at the end of the day. Things are all, I believe that, you know, all of this shit is a manifestation of our own consciousness. So if you're eating anything, you're eating yourself. That's just my own
That's
take.
well put.
Yeah.
No, it's perfect. And it's a perfect segue because we're going to have to wrap up here and go to a roundtable. If anybody would like to challenge that point, and I know some people here in the comment section have been definitely answering, join us in 15 minutes on twitch.tv/dualistic unity. I'll pass it over to Andrew. This has been fun.
The chat covered my mic, my mute button. But yeah, it's been a blast. And yeah, we got 14 minutes and we'll be on the roundtable. So if you want to join us, definitely hop in there. And the Patreon links on my page, then you get to all the links, tier 2, tier 3. See you there. Talk to everyone soon.